the discussion will be on spelling and vocabulary. For your note, we have we have math, we have geography, science, and essay in the following weeks. So please watch out for the flyers and register to attend those contests. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator, Navneet Murali. Navneet Murali is currently a sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania, involved in spelling and vocabulary for over a decade. A two-time night finalist during the Scripps National Spelling in 2018 and 2019. He won many competitions and contests. A couple of them to note here: North South's Intermediate Vocabulary in 2018, and then Senior Spelling Bee in 2019 at MIT. Uh, he has coached many championship the spellers who achieved championships, and also he is leading the North South Vocabulary coaching program. He has authored a Defining Success, a vocabulary prep guide. Without further ado, here is Navneet.
Hi everyone, I'm excited to moderate this webinar. I'm going to start off by introducing our star panelists. So first up, we have Harney Marley. Harney is a freshman at the JP Stevens Biomedical Science Academy. She got introduced to spelling at a young age while watching her older brother, that's me. And she's been participating in North-South competitions from when she was in third grade. She's a four-time qualifier to at the Scripps National Spelling Bee and a two-time top 10 finisher, placing ninth in 2024 and fourth in 2025 last year. Our next panelist is Ananya Prasanna, who is a freshman from North Carolina, who placed third in Scripps in 2024. She serves as a pronouncer and bell judge at both school and district competitions, and she mentors and coaches aspiring spellers. Next, we have Srividya, who's a freshman from St. Augustine, Florida. She placed 10th at the 2025 Scripps National Spelling Bee. She also won North-South Foundation's IVB contest as a sixth grader, and she currently teaches vocab to help the younger generation of spellers. Next, we have Brohat Soma, who is currently a ninth grader from Tampa. He won the Scripps National Spelling Bee as a seventh grader in 2024, and he has been involved in North-South competitions since second grade. I'm excited to get this webinar kickstarted. So the general flow of this is we'll start with some general questions for all the panelists, after which we'll move on to some spelling focused questions. After we're done exploring the spelling side of this, Uncle will go over North-South's offerings for spelling and vocab, talk about the Learning Journey program, talk about contests. After that, we'll go over the vocab portion of this webinar, after which we'll have a Q&A session. So let's get started. First, again, this is going to be for all panelists. Why don't you give us a brief snapshot of how your spelling journey has gone? So from when you started out with spelling and vocab to where you are now. So Brohat, do you want to get us started off?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Navneet, for the introduction. My journey first started in second grade when I did my North-South Regional Spelling Bee. That was the first ever spelling bee I did, and I was interested by the idea of, standing up on stage and showing my knowledge and spelling words. That was my first spark of interest. The first time I made the National Spelling Bee was in fifth grade. That year, unfortunately, was the year of COVID, and it was 2022 when the COVID pandemic was, still widespread. And I actually got COVID that year and wasn't able to participate. So that was, I'd say, a huge disappointment. But then I came back the next year in sixth grade to my first ever National Spelling Bee appearance. That year I had high expectations, but I only to make like the finals of the finals, which is like the top 10, right? But I completely underperformed. I missed a word that I should have known. And I feel like both of these setbacks really pushed me. So the next year I sacrificed a lot. I worked as hard as I could, and I won in 2024. So that's just a brief snapshot of my journey.
What about you, Ananya?
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and add on. Yeah, so my spelling bee journey was very similar to Britt's. A lot of ups and downs. It was pretty rocky. But similar to Brit, actually, my first NSF, my first competition in my spelling bee journey, it started off with an NSF competition for the regionals in Omaha, Nebraska, where I first started spelling. And I guess I just really started because I was really curious about this. It was also mainly peer pressure from some friends. They were like, okay, go ahead, join this competition. And it sounded fun, so I went ahead, tried it, and I found out that spelling is something that I was really good at. So I went ahead, um, really excelled in it, and I went to the nationals in 2022 in fifth grade. Sixth and seventh grade, sixth grade was a little rocky. I was kind of moving to North Carolina and I didn't do my best. So, similar to birth, I sacrificed everything and I really made it. I placed in the top um, three in 2024, and now I am actually volunteering for NSF and I'm a coach nowadays. So, yeah, and I also pronounce for districts and school spelling bees. Yep, so that's my journey.
Agree with you.
Thank you for the introduction, Avneet. So, a brief snapshot of my journey is I've loved words for as long as I could remember. I read a lot of books as a kid. I remember reading Harry Potter in second grade and looking up every single unfamiliar word that was in the book just to understand the context right. And I guess I was just naturally inquisitive about words and more specifically. And I also, like Ananya and Bruja, I also started NSF as my first spelling introduction. So I did my first NSF in first grade. And that's kind of how I understood the process, how it all, that's how it all started. So, and I also think it's very cool that kids can all learn this starting from such a young age. And I just started with simple lists, and as I grew, etymology came into place, patterns, roots, and I first made scripts in seventh grade. I didn't make it in fifth and sixth. I placed 60th. I was a quarterfinalist in seventh grade, and to end off my journey, I got 10th place last year at scripts, and it was a hard journey. It was long, but I think that's what makes it more meaningful. And yeah.
And Harney?
Yeah, so I've been watching my older brother spell since I was in kindergarten, and I've always also loved the feeling of being on stage. I always thought it was really cool, and I really enjoyed showing off what I knew. So I participated in my first spelling bee in I think second grade. It was a locally run spelling bee that my brother also participated in, and I didn't really prepare that much. I just used my prior knowledge from any books I've read or things I've heard in conversations, and I ended up placing fourth in the junior B. And this honestly really surprised me, and I really enjoyed participating and doing well. So this is what started my interest. Um, and then in third, fourth, and fifth grade, I started to get a little bit more serious, and I first qualified to scripts in fourth grade. And yeah, in fourth and fifth grade, um I didn't do as well as I'd expect, and um that sort of set me back in sixth grade, and I started to study a little bit more. However, my school didn't register that year, so I wasn't able to participate in scripts that year, and that also motivated me a lot to sort of pour out my whole heart and soul into spelling in seventh and eighth grade. So I ended up qualifying for scripts 4 times, and I placed ninth in seventh grade, and I placed fourth last year. And right now I'm a freshman, so I'm really interested in giving back to the spelling community by coaching and also conducting various workshops.
Yeah, so thank you, panelists, for reflecting on your spelling journeys. Next, I want to ask if what you guys think about how studying for the spelling bee or studying vocabulary taught you beyond just winning competitions or doing well in competitions. So let's do it in sort of like a reverse order. So Harney, why don't you start us off this time?
Yeah, sure. So the biggest thing that spelling taught me was discipline and good study habits. And this has helped me, like as I've started high school, this has really helped me a lot. I learned how to plan out my time efficiently. I've learned how to focus for a long period of time on a subject. And I've learned that I need to take breaks to make sure that I can focus for a long amount of time. Another thing is I learned to handle failure gracefully and how to bounce back after the failure. That's a really important life skill that I'm really grateful to learn at such a young age. And one last thing that spelling taught me is it gave me a lot of context about the world around me. And like because when you're doing spelling, you're exposed to so many different fields. You're exposed to like the medical field, you're exposed to a lot of historical and cultural events that have happened. And since I'm taking like medical related courses in high school, it's really helped me excel because I know a lot of medical terminology from spelling, and I think that's helped make spelling such an enriching experience for me.
Next, Srividya.
So I think it's first, I want to put out there that most people don't really face the competition environment until they get to high school. And for me, I think that spelling really made me build those habits from such an early age because studying spelling and vocabulary, they teach you, like again, Harini said, discipline and a better work ethic. So these skills that these skills matter way beyond competition. And I think also participating in North South Foundation helped me learn these things like to set goals. Like I'm going to study these amount of hours each day and stay motivated. It built my confidence and especially when you're putting yourself on the stage out there. A lot of people I know have stage fright, but I didn't because I was participating in these bees from such a young age. And they kind of, another thing, they help you so much in school because when you're, and how you approach things like when you're reading a history textbook, you know most of the words because they were in your word list and a medical textbook. So yeah, that's what I think.
Ananya.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and give my answer. One thing that studying for the spelling bee really taught me is how to put myself out there. I think confidence was something that I was always struggling throughout my spelling bee journey. And I didn't really kind of unlock that ultimate confidence until my final year of spelling. It was just kind of building up until that point. But I'm glad I got that confidence before I kind of stopped competing in spelling bees because now moving on to like high school and even the real life, you need to be confident. You need to put yourself out there. You need to take initiative. And that's what I see so many high schoolers struggling with today. Say, like, you're in speech and debate team, that requires confidence to put yourself out there or like connecting with other people, making your friend groups, networking. I think spelling really teaches you that. Um, and another thing is it teaches you time management. I think Sri Vidya kind of touched on this point a little bit, but it really taught me how to manage my time. And because of that, I'm getting a head start in high school. And it gave me just discipline, problem solving skills, a lot of critical thinking, which are some pretty good skills that you need for high school and real life.
Brahat.
Yeah, I think everyone summed it up really well, right? Having this develops a lot of confidence. As you know, you're at the spelling bee, you're being watched by an audience of thousands of people there, millions of people from their houses, cameras all at you, right? 90 seconds. It's a lot of pressure on you, and you have to have some level of confidence in order to deliver under that pressure, right? And then the interviews, right? Like if you do good, if you even for just making it to the National Spelling Bee, there are a lot of interviews and opportunities that you get to partake in, such as this, for example, right? So all of this teaches you a lot of confidence that I feel like that was the main skill that I got from this, other than obviously spelling, right? That confidence. Like 3 years ago, I would not have been able to do this, like this webinar. But now here I am, you know, answering these questions. And then finally, I feel like the other biggest skill spelling has taught me was being able to work hard, right? I know this is cliched, but um, it takes a lot of effort to, for all of us to get to where we were in spelling, right? There are 500,000 words in the dictionary, and even though we might not know every one of them, we um, worked really hard, put in the effort, long nights, all of that, after school, right? Because because of the passion of spelling. So I feel like those are the main skills that I got out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm the moderator, but reflecting on my own spelling journey as a college student right now, all the things that our panelists have said so far, but also a really nice sense of community. The spelling circle is incredibly tight knit. Also, the words that you learn, roots that you learn, vocabulary that you learn, all of those things have their own ways of coming up in unexpected places when you're in high school, when you're in college, probably also later on. Um, and yeah, like uh, something else that's really unique to this spelling bee compared to other academic contests is the amount of media exposure that you get. The spelling bee is sort of just like an American cultural phenomenon. There's a lot compared to other competitions. Spellers get a lot more media coverage, and despite the things that I've done in college, things I've done in high school, nothing beats the media coverage and um, sort of the novelty of being the spelling bee and doing well. So thank you, panelists, for reflecting on that. Now, a question that a lot of parents watching the webinar might find helpful. So how did your parents, siblings, or your support network, broadly speaking, support your spelling journey? So Harney, do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, so to start off, like my brother, he motivated me a lot, and he gave me a lot of really helpful advice, like how to handle pressure on stage and things like that. And when I grew up as well, he helped a lot with mastering like trickier words and again more things about how to handle all the pressure. And my mom was like my main coach. I'd even say like she basically studied alongside me, and she really helped maintain a schedule and making sure I studied properly without much rote memorization to help me remember the words for a longer period of time. And yeah, I don't think I could have done this without the support of my family. And beyond coaching and studying, like the B, one thing I've learned is that the B requires a lot of emotional support to handle all the pressure and the stress of the B. And in that way, my entire family has been like a strong pillar of emotional support. And no matter what disappointments I've encountered, they've encouraged me to continue studying and really put my all into it.
And Srividya?
So I just want to put this out there is that a lot of spelling kids understand that there were so many long nights in the spelling journey. There were so many times I would stay up until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. studying, and specifically nights before county or regionals where I would be super stressed, even nights before scripts. And I think if I didn't have my parents to support me those nights or my brother, that I wouldn't be where I am right now because spelling isn't something that most kids do. Like I can't just talk to one of my friends about spelling and they would understand. So people who understand the ups and downs of my journey, it really mattered to me. And my parents also helped me structure my study routine and everything. And they helped me quiz me, of course. They also kept me grounded because a lot of times I did feel down, especially not making it to scripts in 5th and 6th grade. And they just reminded me that it's the journey that matters.
And sort of on a similar vein, what do you think were some mistakes or rather misconceptions you had about the spelling bee when you initially started studying? And how did you go about fixing them? So, Nanya, you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, actually. So, one major misconception that I believed, and I think a lot of spellers entering their spelling journey tend to believe, is that the way to go about spelling is to cover more words. So, the more you cover words, the more you feel like you've learned. And that's absolutely not true. Because for me, I when I was starting spelling, I would kind of do things in a set-based manner. I would just keep on typing words, and I would do that consistently over and over again until I kind of realized, and I'm glad I realized it early before it was too late, that that just wasn't working. And it may work for some people, but it doesn't help in the long run because while spelling is memorization, it's also a lot of critical thinking. So you need to make sure that you're analyzing language patterns and roots and rules. Um, and while, yes, reviewing words and memorizing them is important, it is also good to have that as well. So it's not just one thing that you're always supposed to rely on. And then, yeah, it's just always quality over quantity. And reviewing and retention is really important. Just because you look at a word and get it right once does not mean you can get it wrong again. That's what I would say.
Thank you for that. And again, on a similar vein, a lot of spellers tend to have trouble with tricky words or exceptions, words that are irregular that you kind of have to memorize. So, Harney, do you want to reflect on how you deal with exceptions or other irregular words that don't follow, language or root conventions?
Yeah. So for some context, exceptions are like words that don't follow like language or root conventions. So, like for example, there's a Greek root agog, meaning like leading. It's spelled agogue, and this is how most of the words are spelled. But there's two words that don't follow this rule: pepsagog, which is spelled igogue, and plutogog, which is spelled ogogue. And the way I would study this, like this exception, is by like isolating this and learning it separately. And this is helpful because like you can just study these two words as exceptions, and then the rest of the words will be a lot simpler. So I'd make a list of all the exceptions with a certain spelling pattern. I'd add it to like a master list of all my exceptions that I've covered, and I'd review this list a lot before major Bs. And yeah.
Yeah, and more broadly, exceptions are an important class of tricky words, but there are other words um, that spellers tend to miss multiple times. And a common question I'd imagine a lot of the audience members have is like, how do you master these tricky words that you have trouble with and miss multiple times? So you also want to weigh in on that, Harney?
Yeah, sure. So, like my strategy of choice for tricky words was an approach called splitting. So what I do is like in a spreadsheet, I'd write down the word in one column, and in another column, I'd write like any piece of information that can help me spell the word correctly. So some things I'd use like roots, language patterns, homonyms, similar words, and if nothing else applied, I'd use mnemonics. So this allowed me to address like my trouble spots and find out how exactly I can fix this in the long run. So another example I'd use for this, one word that I used to have trouble with, it's pronounced collinarium. It's spelled Collunarium. So this word, my trouble spot used to be like the double L. I didn't understand why it had a double L. And when I looked at this word in the dictionary, I learned that It comes from a bunch of Latin roots. It comes from the root com meaning together, the root luere meaning to wash, and the root neris meaning nose. So when you put the roots together, it makes sense why it has a double L. So splitting this way really helps me remember the spelling of the word and also helps me understand the word. And like this can help like in case I'm on stage and if I blank out, if I'm able to remember this split, then I'll be able to spell the word without like having to memorize the word. And yeah, and I review like a sheet of my splitted mistakes frequently, like once a month, so that I can prevent any like unnecessary mistakes on words that I already know.
Makes sense. And Bruhat, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, to add on to Harney, I feel like especially for tricky words that you miss multiple times, um, I feel like it's based on your learning strategy. You know, some people are visual learners. They like to look at the word multiple times to get it right, right? Some people they like to write down the word multiple times to look at it and then maybe capitalize the letters that they keep missing. Um, while some people, right, they just need to repeatedly hear the word, the correct spelling, right? So I feel like finding your learning style, um, I feel like I did a combination of both, of all of them, right? I would look at the word multiple times in school whenever I had a spare minute. I would write sometimes down the words. I would constantly get quizzed on them. So I feel like it's mainly based on your learning strategy. Also, like Harney said, mnemonics are also a great way. But just constant exposure to those words is key.
And Srividya, you also want to reflect on this?
Sorry, can you repeat? This is tricky words, right?
Tricky words, yeah.
Yeah. So for tricky words, I kept missing, I think repetition was the biggest key here. So what I would do, I think what I did was very similar to Harini. I had a spreadsheet. I had on one side all of the words that I missed, and on the other side notes. So in mnemonics, basically, etymology, anything. And what I would do is I would rewrite them and I would also type them. I would create there's custom spell pundit lists. So I would create custom spell pundit lists and I would just type them again and again until I would get none wrong. Or I would spell them out aloud. A lot of times my dad reinforced me to say it out loud. And I didn't understand much when I was young, but as I grew, saying it out loud really helps, and looking at the word while you say it, like Bruhat said, that really helped me when words were tripping me up. And I would write them down, highlight words, different colors, so they could stand out on paper. It's just seeing the word in different formats. So typing, writing, speaking, they all help reinforce it. So yeah, that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, and something I'd like to reiterate is, especially for the parents watching, a really helpful strategy to, apart from what Harni, Bruhat, and Srividya said, is just to sort of to quiz your kids on words that they miss multiple times or words that they have marked. Um, I feel like it's great to type words, it's great to read words, color code your misses, all those things, but I feel like there's an extra level of mastery you get when you get repeatedly quizzed um, on words that you have trouble with a lot. So getting quizzed plus all the other strategies that our panelists said are great ways to master tricky words. So now from the technical side of things, or like from how to deal with misses to the mental side of being on stage, I'd like the panelists to reflect on how they deal with the mental aspect of being on stage. Being on stage, especially uh, when you're younger, is something that can be intimidating. Being on stage when you're at nationals, when there are cameras taking pictures of you, you're being live telecasted, all of those things can be daunting the first time you do it. So panelists, how did you deal with that? How did you deal with the mental aspect of being on stage? So Bruhat, you want to you want to reflect on that first?
So I feel like the main tip here is to just focus on the pronouncer, focus on the word. The 90 seconds you're on stage, get rid of everything else. Keep a clear mind. Once you get the word, no panicking, right? Just focus, ask the information, keep a cool head. Try to use all that information to your advantage instead of rushing to judgment. I feel like if you rush to judgment, it is a lot harder to recover from that and get the correct spelling even if you know the word. um I feel like before, like, you go up on stage, right, you should ways to stay calm, just do something that interests you, right, like watching funny videos, or um talking with other fellow spellers who are in the same predicament as you, right? And then I feel like if you always freeze up before you go on stage, one thing you could do is, practice beforehand, right? Maybe at home, like in front of your parents, while they ask you a word, just simulate the real on stage experience. Maybe have a camera, maybe just throw in a camera there just for fun, right? Just try to model that on stage experience as much as possible.
And Srividya?
So the mental side of being on stage is definitely just as important as studying. Before going on stage, every time I would take a big deep breath to just reset and slow down my mind. I'm pretty sure there's even a picture outskirts of me breathing. But I think North South Foundation really helped me with my stage comfort because of competing for so long and being in front of an audience, and it just became normal over time. All I did on stage was to focus on just me and the word that was given to me, because if there are any other thoughts, then that's just distracting to you, and you have very less time. You have 90 seconds. There's a lot of pressure. So if you focus on things like, oh my gosh, there's so many people looking at me, there's people taking photos of me, then it kind of zones you out. So you have to just keep your cool, like Ruhat said. And yeah, there's a lot of adrenaline. So yeah.
Well, great tips from both Prahat and Srividya on the mental side of things. So there's stress, you know, at the moment when you're on stage, which we just talked about, but there's also this other longer term stress that happens, stress or burnout that happens when you're studying over the course of several years, that slowly builds up. So another question that I imagine people in the audience might have is, how did you deal with stress or burnout while studying? So Ananya, do you want to take a stab at that?
I guess I'll go ahead. So one thing that I did that really helped me was yoga and meditation, because the stress can definitely get to your head, and it's not just kind of convincing your mind it's okay, you've got this. Because for me personally, I tried doing that and it didn't work. So for me, doing something like yoga and meditation kind of distracted my mind from the fact that I was stressed, and kind of it just cooled me down. The other thing from stress and burnout, especially burnout, that really helped me was just kind of categorizing my time and my resources into chunks. So I would not just focus on one like material for one day. I would kind of do one list for say an hour, and then I'd move on to another list, only because I would kind of get tired of reviewing those words. And then, in my free time, I'd kind of make spelling something fun, like a fun activity, because when you're genuinely liking something, you're going to do good at it. You're not going to be very nervous. So in the 10 minutes I would I would open up like Spell Pundit, or I would go through my Quizlets, see what I had, see my mistakes. And I think we were just kind of, me and my family, we just kind of made spelling a fun activity to kind of associate it with less stress, less burnout. And I just think overall, just keeping yourself in a calm state and treating spelling like something you love really helps. Yeah, that's my input.
And Brahat, do you want to reflect on the same thing?
Yeah, sure. I completely agree with Ananya. I feel like change is very important, whether it's, switching up whatever list you're studying, a transition from spelling to vocab, maybe even the environment that you're studying. Some days I would go to the library study, sometimes I would switch rooms. I feel like change, it calms you down a little. So yeah, I definitely consider that. Also, I feel like you have to have some sort of passion for spelling. Um, I'm reiterating this because this is really important, but you have to have a passion to do something. Otherwise, you won't really experience too much burnout, right? So don't do this because, your parents are pushing you or something like that, right? You have to do it out of your own passion that you want to learn spelling, you want to get better at this, you want to learn about languages. I feel like that is a key aspect to this as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I feel like it might be easy to think that, or it might be tempting to think that, you're seeing all these panelists talking about spending several hours a day studying spelling. It could be tempting to think that that's sort of pushed on by the parents, or something that, but in reality, in my experience, and I'd say, and I'd imagine several of the panelists' experience, it's something that is for the most part self-initiated, something that all of us enjoyed doing. And as you move to the understanding that spelling is largely a critical thinking, reasoning oriented activity, I think spelling becomes more fun. Also, as you build community with other spellers, spelling becomes more fun and easier to deal with burnout. Um, so, on a similar vein, especially as you study more and more, how do you stay on track or disciplined when you're on your own? So, Harney, do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah. So I think that the key thing is time management. I think without managing your time properly, it'll be almost impossible to stay on track. So the way I personally did this was through a planner. So I'd plan out like my schedule for the week and then also the schedule for that day specifically. And the biggest thing in my planner was I had a lot of buffer time and I tried to make sure that everything I did was doable. So I'd factor in like school, clubs, other activities. I'd make sure that I have like breaks in case like I was feeling really stressed. And I'd make sure that like, I wouldn't put too much work into one day so that if yeah, if I was having more trouble with the word list than I expected, or if like it were just more difficult than I expected when I was planning, I'd still have enough time to review that thoroughly before moving to the next thing. And also I made sure that I study at least a little bit every day. Like if I was going like on a school trip and I came back late, I just spend like half an hour or an hour so that I'd stay in the mindset of doing spelling. And that helped me keep myself on track and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Now on to back to more of like a technical side of things. What are some spelling resources that you used? Bro, do you want to take this?
Yeah, so this is probably really important because this is like the way you study, right? So first off, the National Spelling Bees, its official source for all of the words that it gets, both spelling and vocabulary. It's the Merriam-Webster Unabridged Dictionary. So yeah, I used that, for searches, just it's good to have that subscription because literally every word no every word from the National Spelling Bee is from that dictionary. um, Another main resource I used is Spell Pundit. So it's this online quizzing resource where you can both learn and test yourself on words. It condenses the dictionary into like 100,000 words or something like that, that are most likely to be asked at scripts. And it's that's the resource I feel like I mainly used because of its accuracy, right? Most of the words from that are asked in scripts. And then finally, there's this book called Words of Wisdom. It's by Scott Reamer, and it has a whole list of language patterns and roots, which help you figure out how to guess a word if you don't know it. And I feel like because, as I mentioned before, there are 500,000 words in the dictionary, it wouldn't be wise to try to memorize all of them, right? So if you can get a general understanding of these roots and language patterns, half of the dictionary just suddenly becomes so much easier because you can apply those patterns and that knowledge to spell words that you don't know. So that's those are the three main resources I used.
And Harney, do you want to reflect on the same thing?
Yeah, so I did use Spell Pundit, Words of Wisdom, and the Scripts word list as well. Some things that I'd like to add. I think one really good resource for beginner spellers is the Consolidated Word List, which is a resource that Scripts used to give in like the 2000s, and it has about 20,000 words, I believe. And it's a really long list, but it has a lot of really good be-worthy words. So I'd highly recommend studying that. Additionally, this might be better for like more like beginner spellers. I use a lot of like books that instead of like online resources. One book I used was How to Spell Like a Champ by Paige Kimball, and I feel like that's a really good start for beginners. It helps make spelling more fun, and it gives a lot of basic language rules and things like that. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So How to Spell Like a Champ, the consolidated word list, they're particularly good for beginner spellers, and of course there are other things in the market too, like Spell Pundit and Words of Wisdom, that are helpful as you reach an intermediate level and start doing spelling more seriously. So those are great resources. The last couple of questions are: how did you prepare for your school or local bees? School bee season is in full swing. Local bees are starting to, a lot of local bees have started. So how did you prepare for those bees? Srividya, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, so for school and local bees, I studied the official list that Scripts provides, the 4,000 word list called Words of the Champions, which releases every year. I think for school, yeah, usually until regionals, unless your regional goes off list. But I studied that almost every single day after it released. So it's 4,000 words. It kind of seems like daunting in the beginning. Yeah, 4,000 words is a lot, but each year they only add around 1,500 new words. So each year, after you're like consistent in spelling, you only learn around 1,500 to 1,000 words each year. And I think, again, consistency is really key because I reviewed these words every single day, and they have 3 sections. They have 1B, 2B, and 3B, which are like levels. And I'm pretty sure they added in a new part this year, school list, so 450 extra words. I practice these spelling aloud, and so I could be more comfortable with them because you never know in school or local if pronunciation could go wrong or anything like that, because there's a lot of inconsistencies in school or local bees, unlike Scripts, we know because that's established. When you're also competing in other bees like Spell Pundit or Spell Pundit Bee or NSF-B, they help a lot because if you've been doing NSF is a 1,000 word list for nationals and regionals, so that's around 2,000 words. You already know so many of these words because they come up in school bees. So it gives you a really big head start. And I treated these as opportunities to, they're testing my fundamentals because moving on to harder prep before Scripts for regionals and nationals. And all I did for Words to the Champions was type them on Spell Pundit spell penned it a lot, and I would write them down. So I would have my mom or dad pronounce the words, and I would just write all of them down. And yeah.
Ananya, do you want to reflect on the same thing? How you prepared for your school and local bees?
Yeah, so it's about the same as Shrivitya's. For the school B, I just studied the 450 word list. That's, I think, the main thing to keep in mind for your school and local Bs is this is kind of the part where memorization is supposed to be in full effect. Roots and rules don't necessarily help as much until you get to kind of the end of the district spelling bee or start of the regional spelling bee. And that's not necessarily asking for roots, that's finding roots in words and associating that with um, their definitions. And then at the National Spelling Bee, of course, roots and critical thinking is in full swing. But once again, just studying the 450 word list and 4,000 word list, again, that might be daunting, but over time, it will seem like nothing. So studying the 450 word list and 4,000 word list helps, Words of the Champions. And then also the consolidated word list really helps. Anytime a school or local bee has an off list round, that's mainly going to be where those words are coming from. It's also good to have multiple dictionary apps installed, like Merriam-Webster, and then also just Word Club, which is Scripps National Spelling Bee's app, and checking the word of the day from Merriam-Webster. That's what I would say.
And Harney, do you want to finish us off?
Yeah. So everyone else summarized it really well. I studied the 4,000 word list and the 450 word list really thoroughly before my school bee. And for me, I think I put a little bit more effort into studying the consolidated word list for my school and regional bee because um, my area asks a lot of off list words, so that's something that I focused on. So I reviewed a lot of my commonly missed words. I focused on tricky words and homonyms, and I studied these words using splitting, as I mentioned before. And yeah, I'd study like fundamental resources like the consolidated word list and the Scripps provided word lists. So and the way yeah, I'd also make sure that I was quizzed these words by my parents multiple times to make sure that like I'd know how it was like if the word is pronounced and how I need to spell the word.
Yeah, so to summarize, the general consensus among our panelists seems to be focusing on the 450 long word list that's provided by Scripps, the annual school list, the larger 4,000 word Words of the Champions guide published by Scripps each year, which is helpful for the school bee, but also generally the main source for a lot of regional bees. And for the words that are not in these two sources that they ask at both the school and regional levels, the panelists are suggesting learning words from the consolidated word list, a 20,000 word list originally published by Scripps that has a lot of good bee-worthy tricky words that they can ask at the school and regional levels. Now I think we'll take a brief pause and Sampath Uncle will go over NSF's offerings in spelling and vocab, and then we'll move on to the vocab portion of this webinar after.
Thank you, Navneet and the team. Amazing topics, the pointers, very exciting and also very inspiring. And hopefully the parents and the students, you will participate in this North-South offerings contest. Um, so just wanted to give heads up what is coming from North-South, how North-South can help you to achieve whatever this championship achieved, how North-South can help you. So there are a couple of things that's coming up. One is like an online live workshop on February 14th. So as part of that online workshop by Harini, there will be 1,000 words given to you, 250 words from junior spelling, 250 from SSB, and 250 from JVB, and 250 from IVB to all the paid registered users. And also free access to Spelling and Vocabulary Bee app will be given for those who are registering with the regional contest. Very soon I will share the screen to show what contest that's being offered by NARSA. And if the students are not ready to sign up for the contest, they can purchase the quizzes on the spelling app to test their skills and then gain the confidence. Also, an asynchronous self-paced, you take your own time on the spelling bee prep class that is also being planned in the late February. More details will be shared by February 10th to the registered email IDs. Now, let me share the screen quickly to show the north-south. If you see the screen, do you see the website? Do you see the website?
Yes, Uncle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if you go to northsouth.org, under programs, you can see contest, learning journey, change makers, workshops, all these things. Under contest, when you click on the contest, you will see all the contests, spelling, vocabulary, math, science, and so on. Now, if you click on this spelling, it's going to bring up the rules. So we offer two level contests. One is Junior Spelling Bee, JSB, for grade 1 to 3, and Senior Spelling Bee from 4th grade to 8th graders. What is involved? So phase 1 is going to be written test with 25 words. These come from that 1,000 words that is being published. Once you register, these 1,000 words will be provided. And then everyone goes to the phase 2. We just want to have all the contestants to have the experience. So this one is standing up and giving the spelling in front of the judges. So that's the oral. And in that, there will be 6 oral rounds. There is no elimination. Everyone participates. Everyone gets an opportunity to get up and answer the spelling. Now, the fact is, all what type of questions that you can ask back the judge, like a judges, like a definition, language or origin, like discussed by our spelling champions. So this gives an opportunity to prepare for the bigger stage. There is a preparation frequently asked questions. You can refer to it. Now, going to vocabulary. Vocabulary also, we have two groups, junior vocabulary and intermediate vocabulary. We have two phases, one written and then oral. 25 words. Again, 1,000 words will be given by the North-South once you register, where you can practice. All 25 will come from there. And then the phase 2, everyone goes to phase 2, 6 rounds. All the words are again from published words. So this will give opportunity to get familiar with these 1,000 words. So the dates.
Sampath, one thing is, so for the written round, not all words will come from the list, right? 2/3 will come from the list.
Yeah. So we will adjust that rules here. And then just to let you know, the contests are planned in 2 weekends. One is March 28th and 29th, and then April 25th and 26th. Please check your local chapters calendar when they are offering all these contests. And I strongly recommend, and like all these champions highlighted, is participate in this contest and all the North-South offerings to become champions like our folks here. Thank you all. Again, Navneet, giving back to you to continue on the vocabulary.
Sure. So as Uncle hinted, we'll be moving to the vocabulary portion of this webinar. So
Amit, 1 second, if we can just
yeah,
have,
sure. Sorry.
if the participants can just answer two of these questions. One is which grade you are in. You can just select one of the options. Okay, so we see 56%. Just wait one more second. So, and then share results. 1 second. Wait a second. So 4th to 8th grade, 70%, and then there is 21% first to third graders. So which is probably the panelists will have an idea of who's in the participating. Then you can. So as Sampath ji said, we'll be having the regional contest soon. So we would like to know if you're already registered or going to register soon.
All right. Yeah, so we'll move on with the vocab portion of this webinar. So before we move into the specifics, I want to ask the panelists why they think vocab is important. So both in the context of how it's useful for the spelling bee and also how it's useful outside the spelling bee. So Harni, do you want to reflect on that?
So yeah, I think I'll focus on how it's important in the spelling bee. So I think that vocab makes spelling, like studying vocab makes spelling a lot more interesting. Um, because you're able to understand the stories behind the words, more than just the spelling of the word. So I found that to be the best part of studying vocabulary. And also in general, I feel like it's easier to remember words if you associate them with other pieces of information, especially the definition. So studying vocabulary along with spelling can help you become not only better at vocab, but also a more consistent speller. And I think like one good example of how this helped me is I used to group words together in like themes. So like I'd study a lot of like musical directions together, like different types of foods together. And I feel like this like I noticed more patterns in spelling as well as it made it more interesting for me in vocab. So yeah, that's why I think vocab's really important in a spelling context.
And outside of spelling, how could vocab be helpful? So Srividya, you want to take that?
Yeah, so outside of spelling, so vocabulary, you see it everywhere. You see it in books, you see it at school, conversations, they're just words, and especially school. So because of spelling and vocab study that I've done, I rarely have to look up any words in school. Unlike other kids that I know, when you're reading a textbook, they like bring out a dictionary. I don't have to do that because I already studied vocabulary, and knowing roots also helps because you get to understand complex ideas faster. I know that Hernie mentioned that she's doing medical, she's studying medical terminology, and roots really help with that. And I think vocabulary is more of a life skill because it makes so many things easier in life, like writing essays, writing anything. It just makes it so easy to express yourself so clearly, and because you have such a big word database. So a strong vocabulary. It also builds confidence when you're communicating. I was captain of my debate team last year, and I think having a strong vocabulary really helped me there and in interviews and everyday life. So vocabulary is just one of those skills that it supports everything that you do.
Yeah, and also from my end, reflecting on how vocab's been helpful outside of the spelling context as a college student, I feel like the breadth of topics that you're exposed to while studying the definitions of words, as a speller and also just more broadly, is extremely powerful and helpful. When I was an eighth grader, I didn't really know what I wanted to study or what I was interested in, but I had a very superficial but broad understanding of like all the fields that existed because I studied spelling and vocab. That gave me an inkling that I was interested in medicine, so I went to a magnet school for high school that was focused on medicine, and it's something that's I feel like the perspective that I got as a result of learning spelling and vocab helped me make a really important career decision. I'm pre-med at Penn, and yeah, just having it also helps you just be more cultured, be more aware of different cultures, be more aware of just the world in general. So, apart from the immediate benefits of just knowing more words, I feel like vocab is a really powerful thing to have. Having a strong vocabulary is really powerful. And I see some questions in the chat about how it can be helpful for the SAT. Yeah, to an extent, having a good vocabulary does help you with the reading passages on the SAT and standardized tests. So that's also there. Okay, on to the next question, which is a little bit more technical. What resources do you recommend studying for vocab? So Srividya, do you want to take that as well?
Yeah, so in the beginning, to start off with, I started this book called Word Power Made Easy, and this considers both spelling and vocab. Word Power Made Easy, it's such a good book to build a foundation in roots and word families and how it all works, and it just gives a really good context for each of the words. I think it's around 200, 300 pages, but you can plan it out very well. It's very organized. One of my favorite websites for vocabulary is vocabulary.com. It is amazing because it teaches you each word through context, and it has like a 2-paragraph definition for each word, which is so useful. And in vocabulary.com, you can learn words and practice them through they have like a word and you get 4 options. You can pick an option. So it's like quizzing you, and it does that through repetition. And you can make lists too in vocabulary.com, and they're also organized lists for you in vocabulary.com. And that really helped me because I practiced like 20 to 30 words each day, and that was kind of like repetition that really helped me. It was like a daily thing. Also for vocab, reading. So read a lot of books, articles, fiction, nonfiction. They also help reinforce words, but more naturally instead of in a more studying way. So you're reading and you see words and you're learning through like context clues and stuff. So you don't really realize that you're learning, but you are naturally. So real world exposure. Yeah, those are the resources that I think are good.
Harney, do you want to reflect on the same thing, vocab resources?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all the resources that Srividya said. I really use vocab.com a lot as well, especially when I was younger and 4th, 5th, 6th grade. I use vocab.com a lot because a lot of the definitions in Merriam-Webster are kind of clunky. They're hard to understand, especially for younger kids. So vocab.com gives like a simplified version of the definition. It gives mnemonics and things that can really help you remember the words. And additionally, for beginners, I'd highly recommend Word Club, which is the Scripps provided app for mastering WOTC. And yeah, I think this is really helpful for mastering WOTC, and the choices are really good in Word Club. So I'd recommend that everyone starts with that. And another resource that I found was helpful for like spellers of all levels was Defining Success, which is written by Navneet Marley, and it has really great multiple choice questions, and they're all modeled off the Scripps questions, and it also has a lot of thematic lists from that are hard to make, that are from like high yield categories, and in general, like it makes studying vocab a lot more engaging. It has a lot of roots and stories about the words in it. So I'd highly recommend getting Defining Success as well.
And I think Ananya, do you want to reflect on the same thing, vocab resources?
Yeah, so for me personally, I used vocabulary.com. I think Srividya and Hernie did a really good job summing up how useful it is. Another thing that's really helpful when it comes to vocab.com is that it covers vocabulary words in books. So if you have a book that you really want to read, you can find it on vocabulary.com, and there are teachers who actually compile the entire book and they have vocab words ready for you. So I think that's just a really cool thing that vocabulary.com does. Again, it just provides really good explanations. It just feels like a game, honestly, when you're going through vocabulary.com. And then, of course, defining success really helped for me because it just had lists already categorized for me. Um, and it was just so easy to go back and review them, mark my mistakes. It was already there for me. And then another thing that really helped was the Big Book of Words. Obviously, it's not the most, I'd say, conveniently helpful because the entire book is pretty long and lengthy, but there are some sections in there that really do help, and I have seen them come in the semifinals and finals. And I'm specifically talking about there are some sections like the foreign word sections or geographical words or eponyms, literary names. I think those are pretty good subjects to look at in the book, especially. And then I would also really just go through the news. I would find words there that interested me and really just read. I think, as Srividya said, that's just a really natural way of learning words, and it kind of compels you to learn more and more and build my vocabulary that way.
Yeah, great thoughts from all of you. I'm seeing a large number of questions in the chat asking for basically a recap on vocab websites, resources, books, etc. So I'll just mention all the sources that the three panelists mentioned. So one of them was vocabulary.com, which is helpful because it has a dictionary-like feature that allows you to search up words and get simplified definitions along with context, as well as some quizzing options. In terms of books, the books that were mentioned were Word Power Made Easy by Norman Lewis, which Srividya mentioned, Defining Success by me, Navneet Marley, that Ananya and Harini mentioned, Big Book of Words That You Should Know. I forget the name of the authors, but it's a red book that Ananya mentioned. Those are the main books that I remember the panelists saying. If I missed something, I'm sure one of the panelists will answer it on the chat. But I think those are the main sources that were mentioned for vocab. On a similar vein, what are some daily habits that you recommend to build or that you recommend following to build a strong vocabulary? So Shividya, do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, so some daily habits that I recommend, again, use vocabulary.com. So there's sets that you can make and sets that are already there. So you just click study set and it'll just give you a bunch of words to quiz yourself with. And another thing that I will mention is there's Merriam-Webster quizzes. So not on Unabridged, just the regular Merriam-Webster website. There's like daily quizzes. There's all types of quizzes that are also great. They're quick. They're like 10 questions each, and they're very helpful. And they're like also categorized like food words, sports words. They also have Merriam-Webster lists that they have on the website. So studying that, I studied like 1 or 2 a day, and those are habits that I consistently did to help reinforce my vocabulary over time.
And Harini, do you want to reflect on the same thing, daily habits?
Yeah, so one habit that I started pretty young, it took only like 5 minutes a day. I'd read like a couple of news articles, and I'd note down any words that were like I thought were good vocab words. And as I grew older, I started to read more like out of interest. But like if you're not really that interested in reading the news, you can just skim through the article. And this can really help identify a lot of good B-worthy words. that are highly relevant, and they're not in many major lists. And one thing that I've noticed is that like Scripps tends to ask words that are relevant to like modern day life. So if you're finding a word in the news, that means it's most likely it has a high chance of being asked at Scripps. And another thing that I looked over is the Merriam-Webster word of the day. And I think if you like subscribe to it, then it'll send you an email every day. And I think that that's also a really important way to like build your vocabulary slowly over time.
Yeah, all of them are great suggestions, and don't take much time. You can look at the word of the day. That takes, a couple of minutes. You can do quizzes on um, the Merriam-Webster website. Also, it only takes a couple minutes. You can read 1 or 2 news articles a day. You don't even have to read the full thing. You can just skim through the article to see if there are good vocab words in it and then collect them. All of those are great ways of finding words that are used in real life, in common conversation, which are probably the highest yield category of words for Scripps. So apart from actually studying the vocab resources that we just mentioned earlier in the webinar, doing these things can be really beneficial to developing a strong vocabulary. Another common question that I think a lot of the audience members might have is about roots, which we haven't talked about that much in the webinar so far. So how did you approach studying roots? Did you study roots separately, or did you integrate them into studying other things for spelling and vocab? So Bruhat, do you want to take a stab at that?
hmm Yeah, so roots are extremely helpful, and I know we're on the vocab section, but they're also helpful just as much for guessing spelling words as vocabulary. I feel like um studying roots, I feel like you can incorporate that in your normal spelling and vocab studies. So like maybe like set like 10 to 20 minutes a day to just review a set of roots, look at their definitions. And you can also, it doesn't have to be just memorizing, right? You can make it a little more fun. So find words in the dictionary using that root and just apply it to context. And then also something I would also do is for words that like a new word that I would learn, like let's say it has a root that I didn't know, then I would find that root in the dictionary and find more words with that root. So I feel like you can get creative with this, and um, you can explore just however you want to, but I feel like you can definitely incorporate this in your normal general spelling and vocab studies if you want to.
Thanks for that, Bruhat. And Ananya, do you also want to reflect on how you approach roots?
Yeah, so I actually have a little bit of a contrasting approach to this. So for roots, I think it's really important to take separate time for them and study them, only because in the early stages of spelling, it's easy to take them for granted because that leads to like a high of memorization, and then those roots just kind of go away. And another thing is knowing roots and rules, all of that. That's one thing, but applying them is another. So, as Rohit said, it's really important to kind of dictionary dive a little bit into those roots, see how they can be applied to different words, and I'd say consistently practice them. So, for me personally, I kept a root spreadsheet and I would note down every single root that I encountered in a word. Um, of course, if it was a very obscure root, I would choose not to include it, but I had a very long list of roots, and I would have several examples next to the root, and I would specifically say what the definition was, and I would kind of make tiny observations with the roots. So one thing that's really fun to do when it comes to spelling in roots and language patterns is to kind of notice certain patterns following throughout roots. So roots can happen, or like roots can sometimes occur in certain words compared to this type of words. So one thing that I've noticed between, say, the Greek root leuko, Leuko, versus like Leuco, is that Leuko relates to more human and animal related definitions, while LEUCO has to do with rocks and minerals. So you can kind of create those small observations and note them down as well. But just having a sheet where you incorporate all of that and taking your own time to monitor that is really, really important. So that's what I'd say.
All right, yeah. I mean, both approaches, the one that Bruhat gave and the one that Ananya gave, work. Um, Personally, I integrated roots into studying spelling and vocab, and I found that more productive for me. I think my sister took the other approach where she had a separate emphasis on roots. Both approaches clearly worked. It's just whatever works better for you. But yeah, either approach can work for learning roots, provided you make sure to have a strong emphasis on roots and don't neglect them. And then I think the final question that we have planned as a panel is, did you study year-round for vocab, or did you mainly start studying in the 3-month lead up to scripts between regionals and nationals? Both approaches like maybe reflect on the pros and cons of each approach and what you'd recommend. Harney, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, so I've always studied vocab year-round rather than like in the last couple of months before scripts. And I'd highly recommend this approach because I think it's more manageable if you do like even just 30 minutes a day throughout the year rather than just cramming like multiple hours a day in the last 3 months. And this can help you not only cover more words cumulatively, but it can also help you remember the words better because now there's more time for you to review slowly and there's more time for you to look through the words and really understand them rather than just memorizing them in the last minute so that you can prepare for the vocab rounds and scripts. So yeah, I'd recommend studying year round rather than like just in the last couple of months.
And Ananya, do you want to reflect on the same thing?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna put it out there. It really just matters what you want your outcome to be when you go to scripts, and also kind of where you're coming from. So if you come from a highly competitive area, maybe starting from the beginning of the year is the best for you. But if you want to finish at a good place in nationals, then I'd also recommend that. But if you kind of want to see what nationals really just looks like, be it scripts or NSF, and you kind of just want to test the waters, I think a better approach would be starting to study from the lead up to scripts. But the pros of studying for both of them, you definitely need to have like a time management especially if you're studying in the lead, like the home stretch when it comes to that time after you win your regionals to scripts. But you also have to have really clear goals. And when you study year round, which is kind of what I would recommend a little bit more, you can kind of take time to make mistakes and figure out what works best for you. And another thing that I found really helpful when studying year round is your school year is not obviously going to be like a school day every single day plus your weekdays. Weekends, you have breaks in between teacher work days. And I think that time is really important to make lists, do some dictionary diving. It kind of gives like that leisure space to focus on other things rather than just reviewing for upcoming Bs. Because the second you start working on the lead up to scripts, you don't really have a break like that. And it's really just go. You need to start reviewing this. There's no time to make lists, but you just have to be very, very clear and focused. And if you have that work ethic, then I definitely recommend that option. But yeah, that's kind of my insight on both sides.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And one last thing that I want to discuss is differences between North-South's vocab model and Scripps' vocab model. North-South is great for vocab, both through the vocab learning journey program as well as having a dedicated vocabulary bee. Scripps vocab is also a central part of doing well at Scripps, but there are some differences between North-South and Scripps for vocab. The main differences are in the format and question model. So North-South vocab, I believe the vocab questions have 4 choices versus 3 that Scripps has. North-South generally has more confusing choices wherein the choices are sometimes designed to make you really think about tricky, similar sounding words and pick the right definition, where scripts is generally a little bit more straightforward and just seeing if you know the definition or not. There's also a difference in format. So scripts has an oral vocab component. There's a written test including spelling and vocab. As of last year, there's a written test including spelling and vocab portions, but also on stage single elimination vocab rounds in each major phase of the competition. Whereas North South has a separate vocab contest altogether, completely unrelated to spelling, with regional round, national round, and both written and oral components. So those are some of the main differences between North South vocab and Scripps vocab. I would argue that studying for one will always be helpful for the other. If you make a strong year-round push for vocab with Scripps as the goal, you'll also do really well in North South's vocab, and vice versa. So studying for one will definitely help you with the other. Those were the main things that the panelists and I wanted to discuss in today's webinar. So I think we'll open the floor to a Q&A for the last 10 minutes or so of the webinar.
Here is one question. How do you bounce back after losing in school where you had a good run previous year? How do you keep?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. More broadly, if you get a word wrong on stage or you miss at a discouraging point in time, how do you, get back on the right track? How do you recover mentally and start preparing for your next B? So Srividya, do you want to take that?
Yeah, whenever I miss a word on stage, my dad always tells me that the destination doesn't matter as much as the journey. And I always think about that because, yes, I am disappointed at first, but if you let yourself stay disappointed, you lose the motivation to keep going. So I didn't make scripts until 7th grade. And if I lost motivation in 5th or 6th grade, if I just gave up, then I wouldn't have it wouldn't have gotten me anywhere. So I think you should always look for ways to improve yourself, even when you're let down. In 4th grade, at nationals IVB, I got 4th place. Then in 5th grade, I got 3rd place, and in 6th grade, I won IVB nationals. So I think you should always keep looking for growth. Yeah. And yeah, one mistake doesn't define you. So it's the journey that matters.
Sorry, any other panelists want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think that and I agree with what Srividya said. And another thing I wanted to say is that like everyone on this panel has definitely missed words on stage before. And like especially if I feel like if any of us gave up, we would definitely not be in the places we are today. So it's important to like think that like this is not the end of the world, and there's always going to be more opportunities for you to continue growing. There's like B's and there's like North South B's, and you can still participate in scripts until your 8th grade. So I feel like making sure that you understand how many more years that you're able to do this is really important. And also yeah, as Srividya said, like the journey is a lot more important than just than the destination. So like the things you learn in spelling are like the dedication and the hard work that you put into spelling is definitely something that cannot be like something that's more important than like what you placed in scripts. So yeah.
Yeah, and one other thought that I have relating to this is I think every great speller has had a great setback. I think all of us, me and all the panelists, have had at least one major, maybe multiple major setbacks in our spelling journey that were very discouraging. And the key was developing that resilience and getting sort of back in the game. For me, and for me, and yeah, I agree 100% that the journey is a lot more important than the destination. Now that I'm several years removed from actually competing at Scripps, I can say that when I was competing, a lot of the focus was, um, I don't know if I had the maturity to think about too much more than just, winning, having a good time on stage, things like that when I was younger. But I think one of the most important things that spelling taught me was being resilient and not caring more about learning and improving myself versus just getting certain place at a certain competition. So great thoughts coming from Srividya Harni, and yeah, don't be discouraged. Everyone has setbacks. The main thing is just recovering from that and keeping your head up.
Thank you, Navneet and others. There are a couple of questions related to whether this recording will be shared like that. So there is a YouTube video, and this recording will be shared to all the registered participants. And also, I believe they post that link in our North-South website also. So again, to cap, the North-South contests are coming up in March and April. Please visit northsouth.org. You can register. You will get the words to practice, and then once you meet a certain criteria, you might get invitation to national finals contest where all these champions participated, and they do like this meet the pro in person also during the finals. Uh, we have 3 more minutes. Any final closing thoughts by the panelists and then the moderator? Just like a recap.
Panelists?
I just want to thank North South Foundation for this opportunity because I've been part of it, doing it for so long, and I'm doing a Meet the Pros session, so it's really an honor. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to also thank North South for giving me the opportunity to share all of my insights. And another main thing about spelling and vocab that I want everyone watching this webinar here to keep in mind is that just have fun with spelling. Spelling is supposed to be a fun journey. And Spelling Circle is such a welcoming community. I swear, the first time I went to NSF finals, I actually met Srividya, and we've been really close ever since. And it's just so important to build that support system. So when you go to a competition, don't be nervous. Make as many friends as you can, and not just through the competitions, throughout the journey itself. So that would be my biggest insight from this.
Yeah, I agree with Ananya. Just enjoy the experience, especially if you go to nationals. It's electric, like a whole week long. It's not just about going on stage. There's many bonding experiences where you meet fellow spellers, right? These are people from the entire nation and even from other countries that all share the same love of language as you. So just keep in mind that spelling, the journey is just as great as the destination.
Yeah, and what I'd like to say is, don't be scared of getting started. Getting started is the best part of spelling, I'd say. And like, make sure to enjoy the journey as you do it, and just have fun while you're spelling.
Guess my closing thoughts are spelling is a very high effort, high payoff pursuit or endeavor. Initially it is going to take a lot of effort initially to start seeing the results and start finding that spark and really enjoying spelling, but the payoff on taking spelling seriously and sort of going all in is extremely great. Gives you a great community both when you're competing and after your competition years are over. Great soft skills that are difficult to develop through other things. Great resilience, great work ethic, great time management, great knowledge of a bunch of different fields, makes you a lot more cultured as a person. Obviously, there's the thrill of competing on stage, the thrill of being in interviews, getting some media exposure as a middle schooler, sometimes as an elementary schooler. There are a lot of great things. I'm also gonna emphasize the role that North South played in my spelling journey. I started spelling after attending a Meet the Pros workshop in probably like 2015, 2016. So a little over 10 years ago. It was an experience that inspired me a lot and motivated me to work hard, make it to nationals, find my own spelling community. So I hope a lot of the people in the audience were able to have a similar moment today. That's all from my end.
Thank you, Navneet. Thank you all. This, of course, is very inspiring session for others to become champions like you. Thank you for spending time, and then wish you all best of luck in all your future endeavors. Thank you for spending some time for North South and parents, and please register with North South so that you also get benefit out of it. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
But we can close the.
Yeah.
Thank you.